This video is brought to you by DistroKid. DistroKid is a service I have been using for something like a decade now, or about 20 times longer than they have been sponsoring things on this channel. And that's why I'm so happy to have them as a sponsor around here. It is a service that I have been using since forever. It's actually the only music distribution service I have ever actually used, because when I started kind of planning for a previous band's release back in 2013 or 2014 or so, DistroKid was the obvious choice for me, and I think that still holds true today. A flat fee to put as much music out as you want, and a service list, a kind of a list of things that you can do, features that they offer, services that they offer, that is constantly expanding and improving. You can do things like automated revenue splits when you collaborate with another artist. You can run multiple different layers or tiers of the service, anything from an individual artist to your own label. And all of this is available at shockingly affordable rates. So for a little bit more off, for 7% off your DistroKid membership, hit the link in the description down below. Helps support the channel and gets you a slightly cheaper DistroKid membership as well. Thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. So last month we switched up the format a little bit on this channel. Rather than doing one of my kind of recurring studio videos that I've been doing on this channel a little bit, which we will get back to, I promise, I wanted to mix it up and kind of talk about a couple specific pieces of gear that maybe we're not yet going to get, or might not in general get a proper deep dive on the channel, but nevertheless they were things that I was either presently really excited about or things that I had been using for a long time and just felt like needed some highlighting. And that's what we're doing again today. We have three pieces of gear that are varying levels of new to me here in the studio that I really want to talk about, either because I just haven't had a chance to, or because I've been using it so much that it seems crazy that we haven't actually highlighted it in a focused way so far here. And it's worth noting at the outset here that none of these brands are sponsoring this video. This video, as previously mentioned, is brought to you by DistroKid, and none of these brands have had any opportunity to make an ask for this video, have not done anything to get inclusion in this beyond just I have the piece and I've been using it a lot and I really wanted an avenue to talk about it. And having gotten all that out of the way, let's talk about some of the gear I'm really excited about right now, starting with this giant box. This is the Sheriff V4 preamp pedal by Victory Amps. And this is basically a tube-driven Marshall in a box. There is no power amp here. This is not a standalone amplifier, but it is the kind of Marshall voiced 2-channel tube preamp circuit in a box, 12 volt in, so we're using kind of a alternate power system than just our standard 9 volt center negative DC power. But the reason for that is, like I said, this is a tube-driven gain stage. And like I said, you've probably seen this pop up a bunch on the channel recently. I have found that this is maybe my favorite kind of medium to high gain sound here in my studio. I was using it a ton with the Neural DSP Quad Cortex for IRs, because obviously this thing directly into your DAW is not going to sound great. But I also found that I don't love it into more complex, specifically voiced amplifiers, things like an AC30 or a Fender. It can get just a little bit too much a hat on a hat, so to speak. But it's great with cab sims or IR loaders, and it's also really, really great, as you will have seen if you saw my last video on the Milkman Amp Stereo. It's really great into a nice, flat, clean platform, and that Amp Stereo is a great, flat, clean platform, and this thing is just a beast in front of it. You heard on that intro track, we are playing everything with the Lincoln Brewster Signature Strat, and that is because I wanted something a little bit cleaner, because we've done so much higher gain stuff with this on the channel, and I wanted to kind of switch it up because this thing doesn't really get super low gain unless you grab something like a Strat. But the sparkle and the character and the tonality of this thing is so compelling. It's been my favorite gain stage for kind of more rock and roll, more post-hardcore style flavors of guitar. In a world where I use a lot of digital amp sims and everything, this thing injects kind of authenticity and earnestness back into my sound in a really, really useful way. So we're going to look at some of those cleaner sounds here in a second, starting off with that Strat, but then we're going to jump over to the Les Paul as well to make sure that we are covering kind of all of our bases in terms of low to higher gain sounds on this thing. We're mostly going to stay in channel 1 because I think it sounds much better than channel 2. Channel 2 is going to get a little bit scoopier, a little bit more kind of treble bitey, and a lot more gainy, almost edging into dual rectifier territory of just kind of like big, kind of like blown up amplifier sound. Volume 1 on this thing, channel 1 on this thing has so much touch responsiveness, so much character, such a warmer sound with less kind of cut to it, and it also stacks really, really well with something like the LVL or a similar kind of well-balanced low gain overdrive, just as a like fattening tool in this thing. Let's give it a listen. So let's start off with the Lincoln Brewster Signature Strat in the neck position. There is such a great touch responsiveness that kind of comes from only something like a neck position Strat, a really good neck position Strat, and a really good Marshall gain stage like this. That kind of sparkle, even at like low gain sounds. And of course, even a little bit of a kind of low gain drive in front of it really opens everything out. We talked a lot about the LVL last month when we did a kind of like collection of pedals like this, but it is a great kind of boost stage for the Sheriff. So like I said, I haven't actually played the full-size amp, but I do know from experience that with this one, you do get a lot of gain even at low settings when you switch to kind of higher output pickups. So we've made the jump now from that Strat over to a Gibson Historic Reissue 59 Les Paul. Here is our clean tone, and you'll hear even with that kind of low volume 1 gain setting that you just immediately get kind of like wall of rock and roll with this thing. And just to have touched on it, let's set that second channel at about the same gain level and hear how not just the amount of gain you get changes, but the kind of character of that gain staging as well. Second up in this video is another oversized pedal in the form of the Grobert FX The One Chorus. Grobert is, if I am to understand correctly, a pedal builder out of Mexico who is building a myriad of cool devices. The one I have played is The One Chorus, and this thing is, I think, currently my favorite chorus I own. You have a chorus and a vibrato. It's obviously very heavily inspired by the kind of like the vintage Boss chorus ensemble style pedals, both in terms of layout and sound, but with some meaningful changes, including a high and low switch to compensate for kind of any risk of internally clipping the pedal, as well as a original and true bypass switch on the side as well. In that original buffered mode, that level control is always going to be present, and in true bypass, it takes it out of the circuit, which again is very helpful if you're running the risk of clipping this thing, which I will say is a thing that you have to kind of mitigate with this chorus pedal. A lot of volume in this will clip at the outset of it, but the trade-off is it is an incredible sounding both mono and stereo chorus. And it's like traditional stereo chorus, like vibrato on one side, dry on the other style chorus, as opposed to kind of like a more modern digital chorus that just kind of like stacks voices and multi-modulates to kind of create that really watery sound. It sounds great in stereo. It sounds beautiful and very 80s in mono, so we're going to take a look at both of those. And as you dig the sounds in this thing, and I think you will, one final kind of plug, shameless plug in this video, these are being stocked at Little Box Effects, which is owned and operated by one of my closest friends. It's an amazing little effects boutique run by my buddy Andrew over at Ambient Endeavors. He's a great guy. His shop is so well curated. He carries great gear, and I'm just such a fan of what he does, and he's such a good friend of mine. So shameless plug right here. If you dig the sounds in this thing, I recommend going over to Little Box, checking this out. He's got a couple in stock still, and I think you'll dig it. Let's get into some sound samples. Okay, so we are back on the Lincoln Brewster Strat neck position. Let's go ahead and hear drive first, and then we will bring in the Grobert in stereo, chorus first, then vibrato, and then we'll make the jump over to mono. And rounding things out here, as you saw from that top-down camera, you know what we're talking about next, and that is the Universal Audio Del-Verb Ambience Companion. This thing is compelling and also deeply complicated in terms of my feelings on it. So I'm going to try to kind of like roll through my thoughts on this thing with some things that I love and some things that I don't love about this thing as kind of concisely as possible, but I warn you ahead, I think we're gonna get a little bit rambly in this portion of the video. The Del-Verb is a delay and reverb all-in-one from UA. You can basically think of it as a streamlined down version of their Starlight delay and their Golden reverb in one device. And there are some things that are really compelling about that, and a couple of things that kind of offer some pretty major drawbacks. Let's start by talking about the things that I love about this. Thing number one is the Universal Audio stuff sounds better than almost anything on the planet, especially in the digital space. Universal Audio obviously has like ported over their things like their plugins for precision digital delay and the DMM and the EP3 and all this stuff into these devices. So you're basically taking what is effectively their like fine-tuned studio quality plugin style sounds. It doesn't feel like there's any concessions being made on sound quality in any of the devices I have played from UA, especially when it comes to some of these delay sounds. The DMM, the analog DMM mode on the center of this thing, it is insane. It's the best sounding DMM I've ever played, but it is also just an unbelievably good delay in general. The modulation on chorus or vibrato introduces the exact right kind of stereo width to the pedal. The modulation sounds incredible. The color knob adds grit in all the right ways. I just am such a massive fan of how good the delays in both the Starlight and this sound, because they are the same. You're not making concessions on the quality of the delay engines going from the standalone to the kind of like streamlined and combined version. And same with the reverbs. You have your springs, your plates, and your halls like you would in the Golden, but streamlined down to this pedal. And with the app, you obviously have control over all these different versions and iterations of these sounds. Where you are making a concession is in what controls you have access to. The downside to these is it locks things way down, which might be encouraging for some people, but it will also be a point of frustration for others. The app gives you access to a lot of great sounding presets, warmer, brighter, darker, grittier, different modulation shapes and everything as presets, but not as fine-tunable controls. Really, when it comes to control, all you really have is what is on the face of this thing. And that can be really, really helpful because like for the delay side of this thing, which really does feel like the thing that got more attention for the Del-Verb, you still have mixed feedback, delay time, color, and modulation with those three engines, but you don't have control over subdivisions. There are no kind of ways to fine-tune things beyond what's kind of on that face right there. And there are some sounds in the app that are like unbelievable, some amazing pitch, quantized octave jumps and fifth jumps that you can create in the DMM, but really no ability to kind of get to the tools that create it, or the ability to kind of like fine-tune that sound any further than it is available to you inside of the app. And same thing with that reverb. You basically, all you have is this reverb control right here. It's amount of reverb with no other controls, no high, low dampening, no diffusion controls, no decay time controls. It's just one knob for reverb and a 3-position switch. Now, once again, you can pick from a myriad of sounds on the app: long, short, diffused, darker, brighter, stereo widening, some pitched stuff, different modulation engines in the reverb. You have access to a lot of very specific and very well crafted preset sounds that give you access to like 30 spring reverbs that all sound different and can do everything from the most beautiful esoteric spring you've ever heard down to kind of the most down and dirty slap splashy reverb possible. And same thing with the 224 hall and 3 different plates that do like a dozen different things each. But that's all the control you have. So for some people, I think they're probably going to want to go Golden and Starlight, but for an all-in-one, this is incredible. The sound quality is so good. and the feature set is enough to survive. It is enough to get great sounds out of it. I mean, you heard on that intro track, there was no trickery happening there. That's not me using the Starlight and the Golden. That's all that delay, all that reverb. It's all being done in this one device. And that can make it a little bit of a tough thing to use in a live context if you're going to rely on a myriad of different sounds. But here in the studio, or if you're somebody who only needs like 3 reverbs and 3 delays, this is a very real contender for your next favorite wet effect. So we're going to spend like the lion's share of this video talking about this one, I think. So let's get into some sound samples and let's kind of unpack where the strengths of the Del-Verb really are. So in the interest of being able to see the screen effectively, we're going to go ahead and screen record the iPhone and just kind of superimpose it on that right side of the screen so you can kind of see the changes being made to the Del-Verb as we go. So despite my frustration with the lack of more nuanced or sophisticated controls over the individual engines and parameters in the Del-Verb, it is worth noting that the kind of like presets you have access to are pretty wide in scope, give you a lot of pretty great sounds regardless. And also the way the app kind of makes changes with the pedal is really intuitive. And while the connection stays good, it feels pretty effortless. So you'll notice when we switch between engines for the delay or the reverb, you will see the labels at the tops of the 2 categories of the app changing with them. So we're currently on our plate and our analog DMM, and you can see that reflected on the phone. But if we jump up to tape and down to hull, you will see the presets available to us shift in real time as well. So let's look at a couple of standout sounds in the Del-Verb, as well as kind of one of the things that I like to be able to do with access to kind of a preset per different engine. So one of the things that I like is, first of all, the DMM is incredible sounding. It's my favorite thing in the Del-Verb. And so it basically lives there. But there's a couple of really cool sounds available to you in that mode that we'll look at. And then we'll basically look at how you would set up kind of the delay side with 3 different use cases across those 3 different delays. And then conversely, setting up the 3 different reverb engines to kind of accomplish that same task, that ability to have 3 different styles, genres, approaches to reverb across those modes as a way of kind of skirting the lack of onboard presets, so to speak. So one of my favorite presets on this is going to be that kind of cleaner, warm, very kind of classic DMM repeat. And then to kind of balance that by taking a more kind of bright, kind of choppy thing for the tape delay. So now we have our nice, warm, dark chorus repeat and our nice, bright tape repeat. The beauty is you also have that precision mode, and that gives you access to things like ping pong delay. So you can also save a properly ping ponging delay in here as well. So obviously the trade-off there is you're still working off of the exact same knob positions across all three of those, which is a function that can be quite limiting, as well as not having access to a myriad of tap tempo subdivisions that you have access to. You just have the ability to operate a quarter note delay on the Del-Verb. But you do have access to, like I said, the kind of preset EQ and vibe configurations, and especially in that precision delay and the analog delay, pitch jumps if you want them, as well as ping ponging that can be accessed across those three different modes. Of course, the Starlight and the Golden have access to all of the kind of like various modes and of adjustments that you might want to make independently, but you get all of those same sounds with less control here, and that is absolutely worthwhile for somebody who doesn't want both on their board or doesn't have room for both on their board. This will get you kind of all of those sounds on slightly more rails, but in one unified package, which is really cool. The trade-off on the reverb side of this thing is obviously going to be you only have the one knob for reverb versus the kind of myriad of knobs that you have for the delay. But the trade-off being you can get a lot more of a different sound from the three engines, a lot more of a different vibe, different decay lengths and everything across those three reverb engines, which actually does give you almost strangely more immediate differentiation across your 3 reverb modes than your delay modes. If you're doing a kind of like darker repeat on the DMM and a brighter, more focused repeat on the EP3 tape engine, you still have a very similar sounding delay in terms of number of repeats, mix, decay, amount of modulation, all that stuff. But with the reverb, having just amount of reverb, you're getting everything else via the app itself and what you kind of choose. So let's go ahead and pull up a few different sounds and kind of see how we can get quickly from like our more focused, tight feeling plate reverb out to giant, spacious 224 style rack reverb halls, as well as some interesting spring options as well. I mean, the fact that you're getting some of these sounds out of a quote unquote spring reverb while still having access to that very Ryan Burke drip obsession. I mean, you know, I'm not the biggest spring reverb fan in the world, but I really love a lot of these sounds, and I don't think it would be unfair for me to say that this is not the Del-Verb specifically necessarily, but the Del-Verb and the Starlight, or the Golden, and the kind of UA sound design in general is probably my favorite spring reverb anybody currently makes. I mean, the fact that this is effectively a spring being, you know, turned into something very unspringy is very cool. Let's keep that one. Let's keep that nice slappy, splashy one. Yeah, I definitely like that one for that's a really good plate for just like thickening up some like rock and roll chords. The reality here is you now have 3 different speeds, styles, and kind of like levels of massiveness of reverb available to you, as well as the ability to get like a driving dotted eighth, or not, not a properly dotted eighth, as well as the ability to get a like driving tape delay, a pitch shifting analog delay, and a ping ponging stereo delay, all in one unit with some drawbacks, but also with a lot of incredible quality delay and reverb sounds, like absolute cream of the crop studio sounds, in my opinion. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate you kind of like listening to all my thoughts and my ramblings. Let me know in the comments which of these is the standout for you and why. Are you in the market for tube-driven preamps or a kind of like all-in-one multi-wet effect style device? And as long as you're still here, I have a Patreon that I rarely plug and should probably plug more often. So go check it out. It has access to an exclusive Discord full of people who are into the same kind of crap that we appear to be. So it's a great little community, and it helps support the channel. So thanks for listening, and I'll maybe see you on Patreon. And until next time.